boundaries that I need to set for myself. And I respect and adore so many people, but I gotta do what's best for you. I wasn't necessarily happy that I made, but I think that I've done my best, at least. I tried to be...
She didn't pause. She didn't ask for time. She didn't even hesitate. After years of heartbreak, makeups, and growing up in front of the entire world, Selena Gomez looked Justin Bieber in the eye and said no. And just like that, the fairy tale ended. But what if everything we thought we knew about that moment was wrong? This wasn't about Hailey. It wasn't about jealousy, revenge, or tabloid chaos. It was about something deeper, something quieter, something that thousands of people watching this right now might actually relate to. Because this wasn't just a breakup. It was a moment of awakening. Imagine being 25. The world is watching your every move. You're building a billion-dollar beauty brand, starring in hit shows, getting Grammy buzz, and the man you once called the love of your life shows up again. A man you've known since your teens. A man who shaped your early years, your music, your heartbreak, and now he's asking you to marry him. It sounds like a dream. But for Selena, it wasn't. When Justin reportedly proposed, she didn't fall into the moment. She didn't lose herself in what could have been. She didn't say yes. She said no, and not out of anger. Not out of hate. But because for the first time, she had the courage to choose herself. Now, years later, Selena is finally ready to talk about why she walked away. Not to spark gossip, not to relive the past, but to reveal a truth that might just change how we all see her story, and maybe even how we see our own. Because this wasn't just about love. It was about timing, healing, and finally valuing peace over pressure. So what really happened behind the scenes of that proposal? Why did Selena say no when everyone thought she'd say yes? And what does her decision tell us about love, self-respect, and the power of walking away? Let's go deeper. Back then, Selena and Justin weren't just a couple, they were a phenomenon. She was the golden-hearted Disney star with a voice that carried emotion like a wound. He was the Canadian teen idol who turned Baby into a global anthem. From ice cream dates to red carpets, beach walks to stolen glances, they looked like a love story unfolding in real time. Fans didn't just support them, they believed in them. They rooted for them like it was personal. Like it was theirs, but behind every dreamy photo, behind the viral moments and fan edits, there was another truth, one the cameras never fully captured. Selena was quietly battling anxiety, lupus, and the weight of living a life under scrutiny. Justin was dealing with his own demons, spiraling in and out of controversies, while trying to stay afloat in a world that rewarded him for being untouchable. They were two young people growing up inside a fishbowl, under pressure to perform love when they were still learning how to survive it. And yet, even with all that chaos, fans never stopped hoping. Especially when, in 2017, Justin came back into Selena's life. It was a fragile time just after her kidney transplant while she was focused on healing. But when they were seen together again, the world lit up. It felt like fate. Two people who had been through the storm finally finding their way back to each other, but something was different. Something didn't fit. And this time, it wasn't just about fan theories, it was about timing, energy, readiness. The whispers of an engagement started as just that, rumors. Blurry paparazzi shots, internet sleuthing, stan accounts zooming in on rings and body language. But in 2025, during a podcast interview that no one expected to hit this hard, Selena confirmed what many had only speculated. Yes, Justin did propose. I believe he was serious, she said. Calm, measured, not bitter, not dramatic, just real. In that moment, I think he truly felt like we were meant to be. And then, with a breath, she changed everything. But I didn't. She turned him down. She didn't reject him out of hate. She didn't walk away out of bitterness. Selena said no because something inside her had finally shifted. For so long, she had played the role the world gave her, the girl who loved deeply, hurt quietly, and kept giving second chances. But this time was different. This time she chose peace over pressure. In a world that constantly expects women to be healers, to stay and fix the broken parts of someone else, Selena made a radical choice. She decided to fix herself. The courage it takes to do that, to turn down the love of someone you've once called home. Not because it isn't love, But because it's not safe, that's a decision most people don't even realize they need to make. But Selena did. And what drove her to walk away wasn't just fear or bad timing. It was something far more powerful, the realization that saying yes would mean losing herself. Again, I didn't want to lose who I was becoming, she said. And with that one sentence, the story flipped. The same girl who once sang, "The heart wants what it wants," had now learned to listen to something even more sacred her head. Her gut, her voice, the impact of her words rippled across the internet. Twitter threads, TikTok edits, YouTube reactions. Fans weren't just surprised, they were moved. Wait, she didn't say no because of him. She said no for herself, one comment read. That's real growth, wrote another. And beneath those reactions was something deeper, a collective exhale from women who had, at some point, been in that same emotional war zone, torn between love and identity, between history and healing, but perhaps the most unexpected reaction came from someone no one saw coming, Hailey Bieber. She reportedly liked a tweet praising Selena's decision to prioritize her mental health. Was it a subtle show of support? A quiet nod of respect? Or just strategic PR? No one really knows. But for a brief moment, the noise of the feud faded and something more human took its place. A recognition, maybe, that this wasn't about sides anymore. This was about one woman choosing herself, but even as fans applauded Selena's courage, new questions began to surface, questions that had lingered in the background for years but now felt sharper, more urgent. Because just months after Selena turned him down, Justin Bieber married Hailey Baldwin. It all happened fast, too fast, some argued. And while love often moves on its own timeline, this shift felt almost strategic to many. It wasn't just the speed, it was the context. At the time, Justin was still a Canadian citizen. And shortly after marrying Hailey, he filed for a U.S. green card based on that marriage. The internet did what it always does, connected the dots, real or imagined. Was it love or was it logistics? Was it passion or pressure? Selena never spoke directly about this, but her words during that podcast hinted at something deeper. People have their reasons for the choices they make, she said carefully. But I couldn't say yes to something that was based on fear, pressure, or someone else's timeline. And that's the heart of it. This wasn't about legal documents or rebounds or even who loved who more. It was about the difference between being ready and being rushed. Maybe Justin truly believed they were meant to be. Maybe he was trying to reclaim something he had lost. But Selena? She had just survived a major surgery. She was rebuilding herself from the inside out. And the last thing she could afford was to lose that fragile progress for the sake of a love that had already broken her once. And if we're being honest, haven't we all been there in some way? Someone wanting you to make a big decision when you're not ready. Someone handing you a moment that looks perfect on the outside, but inside it feels like pressure. That's not just a celebrity story. That's a human one. And sometimes the strongest thing you can do is not say yes, but pause, not because you're afraid of love, but because you're finally learning how to love yourself first. The moment Selena said no, something bigger than just a breakup happened. It wasn't just a plot twist in a long, messy love story, it became a statement. A quiet rebellion against everything the world had taught her to accept. For years, she had been the girl who stayed, the girl who forgave, the girl who tried to fix what was broken. But in that moment, she chose to stop playing the role of the rescuer and start becoming the author of her own peace and the world. Noticed, TikTok was flooded with women stitching clips from her interview, saying, "This is what healing looks like." Twitter threads broke down every sentence. Not because people were obsessed with gossip, but because they saw themselves. In her words, she wasn't saying no out of drama. She wasn't lashing out. She was doing something most people struggle to do their whole lives, setting a boundary and keeping it. "I didn't want to look back and wonder who I could have become if I'd just given myself time to grow," she had said in that interview. That sentence hit like a lightning bolt. It was vulnerable. It was clear. And for many people watching, it felt like permission to stop rushing, to stop fixing, to stop shrinking themselves for love that demanded too much. Selena didn't just walk away from Justin. She walked away from a version of herself that once believed love had to be loud to be real. She chose something softer, steadier, and far more rare in her world peace. And when even Hailey Bieber acknowledged that moment publicly, liking a post that praised Selena for prioritizing herself, it raised eyebrows. Was it a quiet truce or just optics? No one could say, but what mattered more was what it represented. That maybe this wasn't a war after all. Maybe it never was, because at its core, Selena's decision wasn't about Justin. It wasn't about Hailey. It wasn't about proving anyone right or wrong. It was about finally refusing to disappear into someone else's story and learning how to write her own. In the months and years that followed, Selena didn't just move on, she rose. Not with flashy headlines or dramatic public statements, but through quiet, consistent growth. Rare Beauty wasn't just a business venture, it became a reflection of everything she had learned about herself. It wasn't about hiding flaws or covering pain. It was about embracing what made her human. She poured her values into that brand: authenticity, vulnerability, softness without weakness. And the world responded. What started as a makeup line became a movement, a billion-dollar success born from someone who finally believed she didn't have to be anything but herself. And while the media still tried to frame her between two names, Justin and Hailey, she no longer played along. She wasn't reacting. She was creating, producing hit shows, writing music that didn't sound like closure, it sounded like freedom. Songs that were raw, honest, even joyful. For the first time, her story didn't orbit around someone else's name. It was hers, but the most powerful shift wasn't what she built, it was how she showed up. Interviews weren't filtered through PR scripts anymore. She spoke with clarity, depth, and unapologetic honesty. And that honesty resonated. Because when she said no, it wasn't a rejection of love, it was a declaration of self-worth. And in a world where so many people settle for relationships that drain them, that kind of decision feels revolutionary. What makes Selena's story matter isn't that she walked away from someone famous. It's that she walked towards someone far more important, herself. Her journey became proof that you don't need someone beside you to be whole. You don't need a ring to be complete. You don't need to say yes just because everyone expects you to. She chose peace, and that peace wasn't a finish line. It was the beginning of everything else finally falling into place. Stop, because underneath all the fame, the headlines, and the paparazzi flashbulbs, Selena's story is more than celebrity drama. It's something universal. It's about the moment. You realize that loving someone isn't always enough. That timing matters. That peace can be louder than passion. And that sometimes the most loving thing you can do is walk away. We've all had moments where we felt that tug, the pressure to say yes, when every part of us wanted to say no. Maybe it was a relationship that looked perfect on paper. Maybe it was a job that came with applause but no joy. Or maybe it was a version of ourselves we kept pretending to be, just to please everyone else. Whatever it was, Selena's story reminds us, you can care deeply about someone and still choose yourself. You can let go without hating them. You can close the chapter with grace and still protect your peace. And that's not weakness. That's not selfishness. That's power. Selena once sang about the heart wanting what it wants. But what if healing is learning to want what's good for you instead? What if real strength isn't about holding on, it's about having the courage to loosen your grip? Because sometimes the boldest thing you'll ever do is simply not settle. That's what her no meant. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry. It wasn't even explained to the world in real time. But it was clear. It was final. And it was honest. And in a world obsessed with fairy tale endings, she chose something far more rare: self-respect. So whether you're 25, 45, or just trying to figure out who you are in the middle of the mess, her decision speaks to something we all crave: clarity, peace, the right to grow at our own pace. Because real love, whether from a partner or from within, should never require you to abandon yourself. Thought for 4 seconds. Selena's journey ends where real stories always begin, at the quiet intersection of peace and purpose. Today she stands not as the girl defined by a headline or an old love story, but as a woman who carved out space to heal and discovered that her truest power was never tied to anyone else's ring or timeline. Rare Beauty is on its way to becoming a billion-dollar brand. Her shows top the charts, and her music feels less like confession and more like liberation. Yet the real triumph isn't the empire she's building. It's the calm in her voice when she says she finally feels whole, proof that choosing yourself may be the only plot twist that ever really matters. So pause for a moment and turn the lens inward. Where in your own life are you rushing a decision because someone else is handing you a stopwatch? Where are you clinging to a story that no longer fits the person you're becoming? Selena's no is an invitation, a gentle dare to honor your own timing, to guard your peace as fiercely as any fairy tale ending, and to remember that saying yes to yourself will never be the wrong answer. If her courage strikes a chord, share this video with a friend who needs the reminder and tell us below. Have you ever walked away from something that looked perfect on the outside but felt heavy on the inside? Your stories could be the lifeline someone else is searching for tonight. And if you're still in the middle of the mess, still learning, still healing, know that growth isn't a straight line. It loops, it dips, it repeats, until one day the pieces settle into the shape of a life you're proud to live. Selena's choice to walk away didn't just change her story. It echoed into something far greater, something that touched people who had never met her, never lived her life, but had felt her pain. Because at some point, almost everyone watching this has stood at that same emotional crossroads. The kind where your heart screams yes, but your soul quietly whispers no. The kind where the weight of expectation, the fear of disappointing someone, the desire to make it work, the pressure to keep going feels heavier than the truth you're trying to listen to inside yourself. What Selena did in that moment, when she turned down the proposal and chose her peace, was something many of us are too afraid to do. She paused. She breathed. She didn't give an answer the world would praise, she gave the one she knew she could live with. That kind of bravery doesn't come in grand declarations. It comes in the silence after the storm, when you're finally honest with yourself about what you need, and sometimes what you need is space to grow without someone else's timeline dictating your path. Her story became a mirror, a reflection of every woman who's ever been told she should stay because he loves you. Every person who's ever been afraid that saying no would make them look cold, selfish, ungrateful. But Selena's no was not a rejection of love. It was a commitment to herself, a choice to protect the version of her that was still healing, still figuring it out, still building the kind of self-worth that doesn't bend just because someone else is ready before you are. It's easy to glorify sacrifice, to romanticize the idea of fighting for love even when it's hurting you. But what if real love, the kind that lasts, the kind that heals, doesn't require that kind of war? What if the strongest love isn't the one you chase or cling to, but the one you have for yourself, quietly, steadily, even when it leaves you standing alone? Selena's story speaks to that, not just because she's famous, not because her life played out under flashbulbs and trending hashtags, but because underneath the fame, she faced the same emotional dilemmas as anyone else. Do I stay or do I go? Do I choose comfort or growth? Do I give them what they want, or do I give myself what I need? And that's why people listened. That's why her words didn't just go viral, they stuck. Because in a world that often rewards women for endurance rather than discernment, Selena chose the harder path. She didn't just walk away from Justin. She walked toward herself. She didn't break up with a person, she broke up with the version of herself who thought love meant sacrifice at all costs. Selena's journey didn't end with that, no, it began there. Because healing isn't a moment, it's a process. It's slow, messy, unpredictable. It doesn't happen in perfect lines or Hollywood montages. It happens in the quiet choices no one sees, the boundaries you draw, the calls you don't return, the nights you cry not because you miss them, but because you're finally grieving the version of yourself you used to be when you were with them. And that's what makes Selena's story so deeply human. She didn't move on in a blaze of revenge or post-breakup flexes. She evolved in silence. She showed up in rooms that once triggered her and owned them. She sang with vulnerability. She created from her scars instead of hiding them. She chose to live, not perform strength, but become it. Because that's what real power looks like. It's not loud. It doesn't scream. It doesn't need to. Real power is walking away from something you once thought you couldn't live without, realizing you never needed it to be whole in the first place. It's choosing peace over approval, clarity over chaos, self-respect over fear. We often think strength is staying, fighting, proving something. But sometimes the boldest move you'll ever make is stepping back, saying, not yet, or not like this, or even just, I deserve more. Selena didn't say no because she had all the answers. She said no because she had finally learned to. Stop abandoning yourself in search of someone else's love. And maybe that's the part that hits hardest. Because if you've ever loved someone who couldn't meet you where you were, if you've ever felt the ache of turning away from something familiar to protect your future, then you already know it's not easy. But it is necessary. Her story reminds us that you don't have to be healed to begin again. You don't need to be fearless to take the first step. You just need to decide that you are worth choosing, even if no one else is choosing you in that moment. And so now, it's your turn to ask yourself, have you ever said yes when your gut was screaming no? Have you ever stayed because you were afraid of what leaving might mean? Have you ever convinced yourself that loving someone meant losing yourself? Because sometimes the strongest thing you can say isn't "I'll try harder," it's "I'm done disappearing." So now ask yourself, if you were in her place, would you have had the strength to say no? Not just to a person, but to the version of yourself that once settled, once stayed, once hoped someone else's love would make you whole. Would you have chosen peace over pressure? Silence over spectacle? Yourself over everything else? This wasn't just a celebrity headline, this was a woman drawing a line. A line that said, I matter, my timing matters, my healing matters, and maybe that's the story we all need to hear right now. That it's okay to pause, it's okay to let go. And it's okay to rewrite your ending even when the world is waiting for a different one. If you've ever made a hard decision that no one understood at the time, if you've ever chosen yourself and paid the price for it, or if you're still in the middle of figuring it all out, this space is for you. Tell us your story in the comments. We read every word, because healing doesn't happen alone, and your voice might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if this moment touched you, share it with a friend, a sister, someone who's quietly hurting but pretending they're fine. Because sometimes all it takes is a single story to remind someone you're not alone, and walking away isn't weakness. It's the beginning of everything. Falling into place. If this story meant something to you, if it made you pause, reflect, or feel seen, don't forget to like the video. It may seem small, but it helps more people discover stories that truly matter. And if you want to keep exploring moments like this, real, raw, and deeply human, hit that subscribe button. We're building a space where healing, truth, and self-worth are always the center of the conversation. You're not just watching, you're part of something here.